Hi guys, welcome back. Today I want to present to you another board game recommendations video. I've been meaning to do more of these and this is the first step. And since these days we're confined and or not able to see many other people, I've decided to give you a little list of board games that are really well suited to play with two people. Hopefully you'll get some nice recommendation from these, and definitely let me know if you have had experience with these games and or if you are interested in them. I would love to know. The first game I want to present is Patchwork by Uwe Rosenberg. This is a game in which you essentially have to make the most beautiful patchwork quilt, and each player has a personal playing board of 9x9 squares. Essentially on each turn you can either buy and place a patch on the patchwork, and in that case you have to be able to pay the price of the patch, which is given on it as buttons, and then advance your time token on the general time track as many spaces as is shown on the patch you're about to build in. Or you could decide to pass for the round, and that means you can move your time token on the space that is just in front of the opponent's token and gain as many buttons as spaces you moved forward. Additionally, every time that you pass a square depicting a button on the timeline, you get to win as many buttons as are depicted on the patches that are already built on your quilt. The game ends once one of the players has reached the last square on the timeline, and then there's an end scoring. And depending on how many holes there are in your patchwork, how many free spaces are left, and the amount of buttons you have at the end of the game, you can score points. I really like this game because firstly it's played really fast. It takes about half an hour, maybe 15 minutes on top of it if you're learning it for the first time. The rule book is very small, and I think it's also really good for people who are not playing board games that much. It's easy to learn, and I think it's still really interesting strategically because you have to always think about when you're buying a patch to put in your patchwork, to strike a good balance between the ones that are expensive and earn you a lot of buttons throughout the game, but they don't fill up your patchwork as much as some of the cheaper ones. And you also have to be careful about how much time building a patch can cost you throughout the whole game, because if you're buying too many patches that cost a lot of time on the timeline, you end up only being halfway through your patchwork and having to end the game. So yeah, this is a really nice two-player game that I recommend pretty much for everyone. The next games I want to talk about are actually a series of games, and that's the Exit the Game series. These were designed by Inka and Markus Brandt, and they take about an hour to an hour and a half, I would say, depending on which one. Officially they're for 1 to 4 players, but I found that they're actually perfect for 2 players. And they are essentially puzzle games. So the premise is that you're locked in a virtual room and you have to go through puzzles and finding out codes to get out. Each game comes with a decoder on which you set the codes and you can see if they're the right ones or not, as well as a notebook that you're supposed to study very carefully, find out clues in. And in that respect, what is, I think, important to say about these games is that they're for playing once only. So you will have to use the material in the box to fold and cut and essentially destroy at the end of the game, unfortunately. So you can't play it a second time and you can't sell it away to someone else. So that's like a negative point. But I think from all the exit and puzzle games I've played, and there are a lot out there these days, they're probably the best ones. They come in 3 different difficulty levels, and my personal favorite is, this won't surprise you if you watch my book videos, the one that is inspired by Murder on the Orient Express. The third game I want to show you today is called Hanamikoji, and this is by Kota Nakayama. And this is, again, a game for 2 players that takes about 15 minutes to play, so also one that you can play really fast, and you can play multiple rounds, one after the other. In this game, the 2 players compete to earn the favor of illustrious geishas by playing cards that represent items that are specific for each of the geishas. There are 7 different geishas in place, and the player that has the most cards placed next to the specific geisha wins her favor. The twist is, however, that on each turn you first draw a card and then you play 4 different actions that are represented as small tokens and that can only be played once throughout the whole game. You can either decide to get rid of some cards that you have on your hand. You can also put aside a specific card and reveal it only at the very end of the game to really surprise your opponent. Or there's 2 actions in which you present cards to your opponent and they get to choose one of them to play themselves, and you get to play the ones that you get back. Once one of the players has earned the favor of at least 4 geishas, or has earned more than 11 points, points that are shown on each specific geisha, they win. This is a really fun, fast-paced game where you can really play on your poker face with your opponent. I got drawn to this game first because of the artwork, because I personally think it's stunning, and it's just a really well-rounded game in general. Next up, I want to recommend Schotten Totten by Rainer Knizia. This is a game from the 90s, but there's a recent reprint, and it takes about 20 minutes to play. This is also one, I think the artwork is just super fun and really inventive. The setting is kind of like Scottish clans battling each other. In the game, you have 9 tokens that represent territory boundaries between the territories of 2 clans. And on each side of these boundaries, the players play sets of 3 cards. And the game is all about card formations. So you have things like the color run, which would be like cards from the same color, but going like 2, 3, 4. Or you can have a normal run with different colors, or 3 cards with the same number, but a different color. And there's a hierarchy to each of these card formations. And once each opponent has played 3 cards on their side of the boundary, the opponent that has the higher ranked formation wins the boundary. Once one of the players has successfully claimed 5 boundaries or 3 boundaries next to each other, they win. This is also a game where you can really play mind games with your opponent. You can start putting a really high formation, like 3 times 9, and kind of hoping that your opponent won't even try to get that boundary at all. Or you can really spread and only put 1 card on each of the 9 borders first, just to spread out the suspense and let the opponent be unsure what you're actually going to do. I think this game is actually great for people who are more into like classic card games that you play with normal card decks, like poker, or I don't know, I only know like more like French and German typical things, but like belote or skat or things like these. I think this can attract people who are used to more classical card games, because it's a lot about hierarchy of cards combinations and how you can play around with your opponent and wait until the last minute to see which boundary is worth to take and which is not. And it kind of reminds me of like trick games where you also decide whether it's worth it for you to win that trick or not. And it's also a game that you can pretty much learn in 2 minutes. I've played this with several people and it's been working really, really well. Last but not least, I want to share Targi. This is a game that was created by Andreas Steiger, and it's probably of the 5 the one that is the most complex to learn, though the rulebook is still very thin, and this takes about an hour to play. In this game, each player is the leader of a Tuareg tribe in the desert, and you're essentially trading goods. and winning victory points through that. This is a worker placement game, and you play on a modular board that is made actually of cards, and that therefore changes every turn and changes every game. It has a really fun mechanism of taking and buying cards that I won't go into detail about, but you specifically place little meeples or workers on specific tiles of this board, and that enables you to buy cards and earn cards that will give you resources for now, or that will give you victory points towards the end of the game. This is a quite strategic game, and it's not something you would expect just looking at this comparably small box. And you can really annoy your opponent and put your workers in a certain way that it blocks the other player from actually getting what they want. There's also an element of set collection, so you collect specific victory cards and they have like the same element on them, and you play these openly, so you can really peek over to your opponent. He's gathering these cards, let's make sure he doesn't get these cards. So there's a lot of that, so if you enjoy that, I think it's really good. And if you're interested in a game that comes in a very small package but that has a lot of strategic depth to it, then probably Targi is for you. Alright guys, these were the 5 games I wanted to recommend to you today. I hope this was helpful or inspired you to play more games. So yeah, let me know if you've been playing board games, what board games you've been playing, what are your favorite 2-player games, would you recommend any others? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!